Good morning students. So this is physics for class 11 students, chapter number 7 rotational motion and lecture number 3. So today we'll be starting with equations in rotational motion. Okay, so you have already studied three equations of motion in linear motion, that is v is equals to u plus at, v square minus u square is equals to 2as, and s is equals to ut plus half at square. Right? So equations in rotational motion are exactly same like this. Only the difference is again that we have different terms. For example, as you know, linear velocity in rotational motion is denoted by omega, that is angular velocity. So we are considering omega to be final velocity and omega naught to be initial velocity. So this equation can be written as omega is equals to omega naught plus alpha t. So this is your first equation. Second will be omega square minus omega naught square is equals to 2 alpha theta, because s is represented by theta and a is represented by alpha in rotational motion. Okay. Next one is theta is equals to omega naught t plus half alpha t square. So as you can see, all the three equations are exactly similar. Okay. Okay, so the next is center of gravity. So center of gravity is a point at which the weight of the body acts and the total gravitational torque on the body is 0. For example, see, if this is a body, see, it has many particles in this body. That means suppose there are many particles, then they will be having some mass also. So if you are collectively showing a weight of this body on this point, that is, if we are representing that the weight is acting at this point, then this point can be called center of gravity. That is the point where the weight of the body acts and the total gravitational torque at this point will be 0. Okay, so in some cases center of gravity coincides with center of mass, and in some cases it may not coincide as well. Okay. Okay, so when it will not coincide with center of mass is that condition if g, that is this g varies from point to point of the body, or you can say from different parts of the body if g is different, and generally that does not happen. So we can say center of gravity coincides with center of mass of the body in mostly cases until g is different for different parts of the body. Okay, so the next is rotational equilibrium. As you have also studied the equilibrium of bodies in linear motion, for there we always say that if net external force on a body is a 0, then it is said to be in equilibrium. But for rotational equilibrium, the statement changes like this: if net external torque on the body is 0, then we can say the body is in rotational equilibrium. That is, net external torque on the body should be 0. Okay, for example, let us look at this. Suppose this is any rod, F1 force is applied like this and F2 is applied like this. Okay, and we want to calculate the rotational equilibrium about this point. That is, we want that at O it remains in rotational equilibrium. So that means at this point O, net external torque should be 0. So now clearly see, torque about this point O will be due to two forces, that is F1 and F2. So let us calculate torque 1 first. So as you know the formula R cross F, angle is 90 degrees. So torque 1 will become to be F1 L1. Okay, and if you use your right hand thumb rule, you can easily calculate that this torque will be in upward direction. Okay, now similarly torque 2 will be F2 L2, and when you will use your again right hand thumb rule, you will see that it is in downward direction. Okay, now see, because torque is a vector quantity, so net torque means you have to do the vector sum. So when you will do the vector sum, because they are in opposite direction, so it will become torque 1 minus torque 2 should be equal to 0, so that the system remains in rotational equilibrium about this point. Okay, so just put the value of torque 1 and torque 2. So F1 L1 minus F2 L2 will come to be 0, or you can say F1 L1 should be equal to F2 L2. So this is the condition for the point O to remain in rotational equilibrium. Okay, so the next is moment of inertia. So the product of mass of body and the square of its perpendicular distance from the axis of rotation is defined as moment of inertia. That is, for example, if you have a body which is rotating about this axis, okay. Now see, there are, as I told you, there are various particles in a body. If I suppose a single particle m, let us say m, whose distance is r, and remember r is the perpendicular distance from the axis of rotation, okay. So for this particle, moment of inertia can be defined as m into square of this distance, that is mr square. Now suppose there are n particles in this body, so for that total moment of inertia of this body will be m1 r1 square plus m2 r2 square plus m3 r3 square and so on, up to which how many particles are there, that will depend on that, okay. So this is the moment of inertia, that is product of mass and the square of its perpendicular distance from the axis of rotation. Now let us calculate the kinetic energy of rotation. Okay, so to calculate kinetic energy of rotation, we will be using this diagram, that is a body which is rotating about an axis perpendicular to its plane with the angular velocity of omega. And there are many particles. I have just shown 3 particles of masses m1, m2 and m3, and their perpendicular distance from the axis of rotation is r1, r2 and r3. So now we will be doing 3-4 derivations, and for all the derivations this diagram will be used, okay. Now the first derivation is kinetic energy of rotation, okay. So the energy possessed by the body due to its rotation is called kinetic energy of rotation. And now, as you know, kinetic energy is defined as half mv square. So if I write kinetic energy for the particle m1, that will be half m1 v1 square. And as you know, the relation between linear velocity and angular velocity, that is v is equals to r omega. So half m1 v1 square can be written as half m1 v1 square means r1 omega whole square. So this is the kinetic energy due to particle m1. Same will be due to m2. Same will be due to m3. Okay, so we can write down total kinetic energy as. So the total kinetic energy for all the particles can be written as, see, half and omega square will remain same. So I have taken them outside. So inside the bracket you will be left with m1 r1 square plus m2 r2 square and so on, okay. So therefore, as I told you earlier, this is nothing but moment of inertia of the body. So this will become half into omega square into I. So that is kinetic energy of rotation is defined as half I omega square, okay. So now you can relate it with kinetic energy of linear motion, that is half mv square. As I told you in last lecture also, mass is the equivalent to moment of inertia in rotational motion. So instead of mass we have I, and instead of v we have omega. So remember, this kinetic energy of rotation is half I omega square. Okay, so the next is the relation between torque and moment of inertia, okay, that is tau and I, okay. So now for that, you know, A1 is equals to R1 alpha, and the diagram is same as I told you earlier, okay. A1 is R1 alpha, A2 is R2 alpha, right? A3 will be R3 alpha similarly. So now if I calculate force on different particles, as you know, the formula of force is ma, that is mass into acceleration. So for particle 1, F1 will be m1 a1, A is r1 alpha, okay. So F1 will come to be m1 r1 alpha. Similarly, F2 will come to be m2 r2 alpha and so on. So if I calculate torque due to this force first, okay. So torque 1 will be r1 cross f1. R1 will remain as it is, cross F1 is m1 r1 alpha as you have calculated here. Okay, so now this will become m1 r1 square into alpha. Similarly, torque 2 will come to be m2 r2 square alpha. So, and similarly torque 3 will come to be m3 r3 square alpha and so on, okay. So now again total force will be torque 1 plus torque 2 plus torque 3 and so on, that is, see, alpha is same. So alpha will come outside and you will again be left with m1 r1 square plus m2 r2 square plus so on up to n particles, you can say, okay. So now again this is nothing but moment of inertia of the body. So torque is I alpha. So this is the relation between torque and moment of inertia. Again, you can relate it with the term F is equals to ma. Force is represented by torque, mass by moment of inertia, and A by alpha. So again, the equation for linear motion and rotational motion has come to be same. Okay, so torque is I alpha. Now let us calculate a relation between angular momentum and moment of inertia. Again, for that we'll be using V1 is R1 omega and V2 is R2 omega. You know that. If you calculate linear momentum, that is M1 V1. So P1 will be M1 V1, P2 will be M2 V2. Now put these values in this equation, that is L is equals to R cross P. So see, I have just directly added there because see, total angular momentum will be L1 plus L2 plus so on. So L1 will be nothing but R1 cross M1 V1 plus L2 will be R2 cross M2 V2 plus so on up to. Okay. Now V1 is nothing but R1 omega, as I told you here. So V1 is R1 omega. So this will become M1 R1 square omega plus this will become M2 R2 square omega plus so on up to n particles. Okay. So now again omega will come outside. So you will be again left with M1 R1 square plus M2 R2 square, which is again I. So L will come to be I omega. Again you can compare it with the equation P is equals to mv. Mass is represented by moment of inertia and V by omega. Okay. So we have derived two relations, that is torque is equals to I alpha and L is equals to I omega. Okay. Now let us see conservation of angular momentum. As in the last lecture, you derived the equation torque is equals to dl by dt. So from here, if net external torque is 0, then you see if torque is 0, that means dl by dt is 0. And as you know, the differentiation of a constant is always 0. That means angular momentum is a constant if net external force or acting on a body, net external torque is 0. So therefore we can say when no net external torque acts on a system of particles, then total angular momentum remains constant. Okay. So by total angular momentum you mean L1 plus N2 plus L3 up to Ln will remain constant. Now suppose if I am talking about two particles only, that means total angular momentum of those particles will also remain constant, and just we have calculated a relation L is equals to I omega. That is, we can say if the angular momentum is conserved, that means I1 omega will remain constant, will remain equal to I2 omega 2. Okay. So if in any question you are given that angular momentum remain conserved, then you can use this relation, that is I1 omega 1 should be equal to I2 omega 2. Now let me give you some examples of conservation of angular momentum. So the first example is example of a ballet dancer. Okay. So what happens? See, ballet dancers revolves around, right? Now in one case, suppose if her hands are completely stretched and legs as well, and in second case the hands are crossed as well as legs also. Okay, so now see what happens in this case. See, this is the axis of rotation because the ballet dancer is rotating like this. So this is the axis of rotation. That means in this case R, that is perpendicular distance from the axis of rotation, is very large. Therefore moment of inertia would be very large in this case. But in this case, because the perpendicular distance from the axis of rotation is small, therefore R is small in this case, and therefore moment of inertia is also very small. Now if we talk about conservation of angular momentum, L remain constant. If I is decreasing, that means omega will increase. So in this case, by decreasing its moment of inertia, the ballet dancer can increase its angular velocity. That is, if we compare these two cases, the angular velocity of the ballet dancer will be very high in this case, and this is the reason why ballet dancer while dancing fold her hands to increase her angular velocity. Okay. Similarly, while jumping, second example, when a cat jumps, that is when she takes a jumps, she always stretches her body, or especially she stretches its tail. Okay. Now why does a cat do so? Because see, again when she will increase the radius, that means the moment of inertia is increasing. Okay. So if r is increased, moment of inertia will increase, and again due to conservation of angular momentum, if I is increasing, omega will decrease. That is, the cat will not roll and it will safely land on the another floor where it wants to jump. Okay, so in this case the ballet dancer wants to increase its angular velocity, and in this case the cat wants to decrease its angular velocity. Both are working on the conservation of angular momentum. Okay, so the next topic is radius of gyration. Okay, so radius of gyration is defined as root mean square distance of the different particles of the body from the given axis. Okay, so let us calculate our expression for it. So I, as you know, moment of inertia is defined as m1 r1 square plus m2 r2 square up to mn rn square. So if we suppose all the particles of the body have mass m, so therefore m1 will be equal to m2 will be equal to mn, that is m. So m will come outside of this. So you will be left with r1 square plus r2 square plus r3 square up to rn square. Okay. So now let us suppose there are total n particles in the body. Now if I multiply and divide this equation by n, so it is multiplied and divided by n. Okay, now this term, this is nothing but root mean square of the distance of different particles from the axis of rotation. So this is defined as the radius of gyration, that is root mean square of the different particles from the axis of rotation. Okay, and we have supposed there are n particles. Okay, so k is defined like this, and m into n, that is, see, we have each particle has a mass m and we have n particles. That means m into n is nothing but capital M, where capital M is total mass of the body. So this equation can be written as I is equals to m into, because this is k's square root and here it will become k square. So I can be defined as mk square, that is total mass of the body and the square of radius of gyration. Okay, so do not get confused between K and R. K is your radius of gyration, which is defined like this, and R is your perpendicular distance of a particular particle from the axis of rotation. Okay students, so now I'll be discussing the homework solution of lecture number 1 and lecture number 2. Okay, so question number 1 and 2 was easy question, and I hope all of you must have solved that. So I'll be starting with question number 3. So the question says, a child sits stationary at one end of a long trolley moving uniformly with speed v on a smooth horizontal floor. If the child gets up and runs about on the trolley in any manner, what is the speed of center of mass? So see, when the child stands up and starts moving, then all the forces involved are internal forces, because no external force is applied. And as I have told you, if there is no external torque, then there will be no change in the velocity of the center of mass. So therefore, speed of the center of mass, or you can say velocity, will remain constant, so it will remain unchanged. Okay. In question number 4, you have to prove that area of triangle contained between two vectors a and b is 1/2 of the magnitude of a cross b. So for that, let us assume this is a vector a, this is the vector b. Now let us draw from this point a perpendicular on vector a and mark it as mn. This is your o, this is your p, and let us complete this parallelogram also. Okay. Now if you calculate sine theta in the triangle OMN, so sine theta will be perpendicular, that is mn upon hypotenuse, that is OM, mn upon OM. Now you can clearly look here, OM is nothing but b. So putting OM equal to b, from here mn will come to be b sine theta. Mark it first equation. Now as you know, the magnitude of a cross b is ab sine theta. A is nothing but OP. So A is OP and B sine theta is MN. It is MN, right? Now, if I divide and multiply this equation by 2, so this is divided and multiplied by 2. So now if you clearly look here, keep this 2 as it is. Half into OP, that is this, and mn, that is this. So half into base into height. So this is nothing but the area of the triangle OMP, right? So A cross B has come to be equal to 2 into area of triangle OPM. So therefore from here area of OPM triangle will come to be half into magnitude of A cross B, and this was to prove in this question. Okay, so we have proved that the area of the triangle contained between any two vectors AB is equals to half of magnitude of A cross B. Okay, so fifth and sixth question are also easy questions. So now let us discuss question number 7. So it says there are two particles each of mass m and speed v which travel in opposite directions along parallel lines separated by a distance d. That is, this is a particle m and this is another particle m. They are traveling in opposite directions with the speed v, okay, in the parallel lines. Then you have to show that the vector angular momentum of the two particle system is the same wherever be the point about which angular momentum is taken. So this is saying either I take either I take A or I take B, and if I calculate total angular momentum of the system, it should remain constant. We have to prove that. So for that, let us assume, see, 2 points are given to us. Let us assume one more point C, which is at a distance y from A. Okay, so now what we will do, we will calculate angular momentum about A, about C and about B, and we will prove that all those angular momentum are coming to be equal. Okay, so to calculate angular momentum about A first. So as you know, angular momentum is R cross P and P is mv. So basically L is mvr, right? So for point A, see, now for this m, the distance is 0 because it is at point A only. So for that, L will come to be 0. So another particle is at a distance d. So for this, angular momentum at A point will come to be mvr, that is mvd, right? Similarly at point B, for this mass distance is 0. So L will come to be 0. Therefore L will be again due to this, that is mv into d. Therefore, angular momentum about B point will also come to be mvd. Now AC is y. Now let us calculate angular momentum about C. Okay, so for this particle, okay, let us calculate for this particle first. For this particle, the perpendicular distance is y. So the angular momentum for A particle about C will be mvy. If this is y and this is d, this distance will be d minus y. So we can say for the particle B, the distance from C is d minus y. So plus mvr, that is d minus y. mvy and minus mvy will cancel out. So you will be left with mvd again. So as you can see, LA, LB and LC all are equal. That means for this two particle system, the angular momentum is same wherever point you can take to calculate the angular momentum. Okay. So this was the solution of your homework. Okay, so after going through today's lecture, you can do question number 8, 14, 17 and 20 from your NCERT book. Thank you.